welcome back to the Fighting Irish Faithful Show, episode 16 of season 2. And tonight we're going to talk about why Notre Dame fans may or may not, or should not, be upset with a team that's 9-1. But first, let's talk about this victory over the Virginia Cavaliers. Throw out a ton of love to Logan Diggs and your honorable Michael Mayer. Gonna have some good reflections, though, on where the program is right now, where we need to be headed, and, of course, preview our next opponent, the Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech. So stay tight, sit back, relax, pour yourself a drink. Let's go, Irish.
Three wide receivers right. They're going to go for two. Back to throw. Walsh looks, has the time, lost the ball. The pass is batted down. It's batted down by Carroll.
Dawson throws, open receiver in the end zone. Touchdown, Notre Dame. Somehow, the Irish did it.
Out of the pack, 30, 35. Goodbye, baby. At the 50, the 40, the 30, the 20, the 10. Five, rocket touchdown, Irish.
Zibikowski looking for a block. Touch to the right to the 40. Gets a block, gets to the 45, 50. Up to the 45, 40, 30. 1 minute to beat. 20, 15, 10. He's done to the 5. Touchdown, Irish.
Welcome back to the Fighting Irish Faithful podcast, everyone. Boys, girls, ladies, gentlemen, dogs, cats. We won't discriminate against anyone here. Thank you for joining me for tonight's episode. A little late this week. But I have no excuses here. We're just, we're doing our thing here. Thank you for joining me. This is a show about Notre Dame football. If you're new, welcome. You can find me on YouTube at Fighting Irish Faithful, Spotify, iTunes, all those good places. There's also a Twitter website for me, Fighting Irish Faithful, or just search Faithful_Irish, and I come right up. Thank you very much for joining me, lending me your ears for the next half hour, 45 minutes. I really don't know how long this is going to take, but we're going to have some good times. So to start off, if you're new, thank you. We like to provide some stats, some numbers, and some data to this podcast about Notre Dame football. We won't just reminisce on the past or repeat, just read comments on YouTube, from super chats or anything of that nature. Although if I was popular enough, I probably would also be reading super chats because it usually involves money. But anyway, we are not yet sponsored. The Dots Pretzels campaign kind of stalled out. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to last week's episodes. And if you haven't eaten Dots Pretzels, they're amazing. You're missing out on something that's wonderful that you could add to your life. And maybe not the best thing for your diet, but they're delicious. Dots Pretzels, giving them a shout out anyway because I'm still holding on to some of them. We also drink scotch on this podcast, and it's getting serious here. Notre Dame, 9-1, defeats Virginia, and things are looking really good right now for the team. There really shouldn't be anything to worry about. More to talk about on that coming up. But we did get a new scotch for the episode. We got a Kirkland 12-year-old blended Scotch whiskey. It's not the $18 one. It's a little more than that price-wise. Now, funny story. I was watching an old zombie movie, 28 Days Later. That's the one that takes place in the United Kingdom, where I forget the name of the actor, but he was in one of the new Batman movies. He played, I think, the Scarecrow. He's in that movie. Anyway, he wakes up in the hospital, and he realizes there's some zombie apocalypse going on. Long story short, there's a scene in the movie where him and another dude are in a grocery store and they're just getting canned goods and stuff. And the old dude goes to the liquor aisle and he gets scotch. Now, he's looking at a particular box and they don't actually show the label of the box of whiskey. However, I'm looking at on most fine boxes of whiskey, there's like a symbol or a logo, something of that nature. And I'm like, wait a second, I know that logo. Pause the movie, go to the cupboard, reach to the back where we have some of the good stuff, and I was 100% right. It was Lagavulin. Lagavulin is a very smoky, peaty whiskey from the island of Islay, which is a western island of Scotland, and it is north of Northern Ireland. So I was very proud of myself for recognizing the Lagavulin logo on a whiskey I only drink for very special, nice occasions. So, self 5 for me on that. So we are having the, not Lagavulin, but the Kirkland 12-year-old because our glass is relatively more than half full here. So that's where we're at. One other thing coming up, if you're a long supporter of the podcast, what is coming up? Gear. We are really, really close to launching a new store, launching Fighting Irish Faithful podcast gear. It is coming. It'll definitely be coming before the end of the month. Hopefully, definitely in time for Thanksgiving and Black Friday. So get your Christmas shopping in. I'm really not doing this for money, guys. I'm really doing this because I enjoy doing this, and I quite frankly want to make some t-shirts. I'm probably going to buy every single one that I make because it looks good. I'm not going to give away any of the things, but if you've listened to me long enough, you'll pick up on a few things. So we're looking at some gear definitely for the Fighting Irish Faithful podcast. So thank you. Here we go. Thank you in advance. So stay tuned. I will say this. I'm looking at selling them on Amazon and on Etsy. So that is right now where, stay tuned if that changes. But right now, Amazon and Etsy are looking like the storefronts for Fighting Irish Faithful podcast, Notre Dame football gear. Although not officially affiliated with the university because I'll violate some trademarks and copyrights and just don't want to get into do anything like that. Anyway, we're moving on now. Let's talk about some football. So Notre Dame football. So Notre Dame beat Virginia. We did not kill them the way I would have liked to, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. First, no surprises. Notre Dame wins. We win by 25 points. We should be happy with that, right? Notre Dame now sits at 9-1. Very, very solid record. And there's really not a whole lot to complain about the game when you look at the numbers. If you look at the game with your glass half full, like my scotch is right now, be happy. We ran the ball 62% of the time. We amassed 249 yards. Very, very good. Our play selection was great for the most part, except when we threw interceptions and had a fumble. Oops. But 249 rushing yards is better than the average for the national champion over the last 10 years. So that's really good. So hooray for our side. On defense, we had 7 sacks. 7 sacks. It's absolutely fantastic. It is the best it has been all season. We have never amassed that many sacks. Now, granted, Virginia Tech is not a good team. Virginia Tech's also not doing well either. I think I saw something that they're thinking of firing Justin Fuente. But anyway, Virginia is not a good team right now. Their quarterback was banged up. He's kind of a mobile, Sam Howell kind of guy. He was banged up. He had a cracked rib or something and clearly should not be playing. So Virginia plays a true freshman, and hey, your first game is against Notre Dame, a team that's kicking ass and ranked top 10 in the playoffs. So good luck, buddy. Yeah, I kind of felt bad for that guy. Now, Kurt Heinisch didn't eat his face off, but Bo Bauer got to him, and so did Riley Mills. Riley Mills had 2 sacks. Amazing. Also, really good, Fighting Irish Faithful. Notre Dame, 0 sacks against us. This is the first game where Cone was not sacked. Hooray! This deserves a toast for that. Oh my gosh, Cone was not sacked. Usually it's just he stands there and pees down his leg a little bit like Dan Christ and he gets sacked, but that did not happen. So hooray, be happy for that. Bo Bauer ends up leading the defense with 9 total tackles. It's really amazing. Now, he's not yet playing fullback, but that may not be necessary because Logan Diggs is blowing my mind. He had one of the best hurdles I have ever seen. And it wasn't like a hurdle like like he's running track and field or what Najee Harris did to us last year in the bowl game. No, this was like he's doing parkour. He like kind of like put both feet up. Like, does he ski in the off season? Probably not. But he seriously, the way he hurdled him was not your standard hurdle. But that happened in the first quarter. It was a 3rd and 2 play, and he ended up getting 26 yards on that run. He also broke 3 tackles. One of them was a stiff arm. Go back, rewatch the highlight. It will make you feel better if you're having a bad day at work. It's really, really good. Logan Digg ends up finishing the game with 9 carries, 64 yards, with a 7.1 yards average per carry. Very, very good. That is absolutely stellar. Kyron Williams also doing well. Now, we won't highlight Kyron Williams too much this game. He, of course, gets a touchdown. He gets like a 20-yard touchdown run, right? It's awesome. He has moved up into the top echelon of all-time Notre Dame greats. He has passed my man Dexter Williams. I believe he's tied with total touchdowns with Tony Rice. I will confirm that next week. Let's make a note here. Kyron versus all-time rushers. Okay. We'll do that next week. But the toast this week is not to Logan Diggs for his amazing hurdle. It's going to be another player. Your honorable Michael Mayer. He is the toast because he had one of the most athletic catches I have seen. He didn't jump up for the ball. He didn't dive for the ball. He didn't one-hand catch the ball. He reached around the defender to catch the ball and pull it in. He ended up with our first touchdown of the game. He had 7 receptions and 84 total yards, leading all of our receivers, even leading Kevin Austin, my man. But that reach around catch, also great highlight, but that really takes someone with strong hands and real athleticism to do that. He basically said, get out of my way. And yes, bro, I'm seeing this on Facebook Live. I am going to talk about this. This is something we would do in practice. It was called the pole drill. If we're not a receiver, it's not inappropriate. Okay. It's not a weird fitness place that people go and you see fails on YouTube of people falling off of very tall metal poles. That's not what this is. The pole drill is you pretend you're running in place and you have to catch the ball, reach around the goalpost, the center pole, reach around and catch it. And what it does is it forces you to A, catch with your hands, and B, deal with a distraction, an interference. Be able to catch the ball with your hands in front of a potential defender. That is exactly what the Honorable Mayer did on this. So he is the toast of the night because that takes pure athleticism to do that. He is cementing his name. It's being chiseled in on the legacy that is tight end U, Notre Dame. Now, because Mayer is chiseling his name on the Mount Rushmore of tight end U here, I wanted to look back at where he is right now all time versus the other great tight ends in Notre Dame history. Go back to episode 3 of this season. All right. I think it's the one where I opened up with the Power Rangers theme. Don't ask why I did that. It just sounded fun. But I compared Mayer and where he was after his freshman year and going into this coming season with his stats and kind of what he has to accomplish to really join the likes of Tyler Eifert, Kyler Rudolph, John Carlson, Anthony Fasano, Ken McAfee, and Dave Casper. Those are the greats of the greats for tight ends that have ever played at Notre Dame. If I'm missing one, someone please at me on Twitter or send me an email at fightingirishfaithful@gmail.com. But I won't go into everyone's stats, but what I did want to look at is where he is relative to these other guys, these other greats. And not so much from yards and touchdowns, but the number of receptions it takes before one of these tight ends scores a touchdown. So it's kind of like an efficiency thing, how many, like, I think Dexter Williams was scoring a touchdown like 1 out of every 8 times he touched the ball or something, right? So for these tight ends, how many times do they score, or how many catches does it take on average per the math before they get a touchdown? Now, Mayer right now is in 7th place of all these guys, so he still has some work to do, and I think he just needs to Mack truck some people, and there may be a little bit with Reese in this, how Reese is kind of using him as a safety valve, as an outlet, just to keep the chains moving, and that's fine. Like, if we win the games, I will never complain. I think some of these other guys, especially in the Weiss era, and with Dan Devine, with Ken McAfee, they were a genuine target, running corner routes, running long, skinny posts, what have you, into wide open space, and this big man was running down the field. Kelly, of course, used Tyler Eifert like a big receiver as well. But receptions it took for each of these guys to get a touchdown. Mayer right now is sitting at 15.6 receptions per touchdown, so it's 7th. Tyler Eifert, surprisingly, is 6th on this list, 12.72 receptions for touchdown. But Carlson is next with 12.5. Then 4th on the list is Anthony Fasano, 11.5. 3rd, bronze medal, Kyle Rudolph, 11.25 receptions for every touchdown. Number 2 on the list, Ken McAfee from the 1977 team, 8.5 receptions, and then he scored a touchdown. He's also the all-time leader in tight ends. He has 15 touchdowns total for his career, and 1,759 yards. So he probably was more like a receiver, but he technically was a tight end. But number 1, the most efficient tight end Notre Dame's ever had, comes from the Parsegian years, and that is Mr. Dave Casper, NFL legend, played with the Raiders, right? But listen to this. He only ended up with 4 touchdowns, but based on the number of receptions he had, he scored a touchdown every 5.25 receptions. It's pretty amazing. So Mayer is awesome, and he is definitely the toast, and he's up there in top 5 my favorite guys on this team. But he definitely is not as efficient as some of these other guys. So Mayer, keep doing what you're doing. Lower your shoulder more. Stop jumping in the air, right? Just stiff arm people. And I'm hoping that Reese will use him more in space, because quite frankly, he just needs to do that. He needs to be, when he catches the ball, he needs to be not running towards the sideline. He needs to be running up the field, at least at a 45-degree angle. Now, other good news this past week after the game, the Twitter shout out. Now, this is kind of a new area for me. I don't really talk a whole lot about recruiting, but this particular Twitter shout out made me very happy, because it involves the downfall, the fall, the burning of USC. No, I'm not going to eat another hot pepper. However, Domani Jackson, a 5-star recruit, he decommitted from USC. This was on Twitter. And he also went to West Coast Irish's high school. He currently goes to Mater Dei down in Santa Ana, a very prestigious high school, very, very good program out there, very good school. But West Coast Irish was very happy to see this, as was yours truly, Fighting Irish Faithful, where Domani Jackson decommits from USC, a place that he was basically going to be a shoe-in. And I don't know if it's because USC sucks. It's hopefully that. Now, per some of the rankings of recruits, websites, what have you, ESPN 24/7, it doesn't really matter. He's looking at Alabama and Michigan. Now, I really, really hope he doesn't go to either of those schools. Want him to go to Notre Dame, but he hasn't visited Notre Dame yet. So we'll see about that. But quite frankly, look, if he's going to go to Michigan, why don't you give Notre Dame a look? Because seriously, dude, Michigan sucks. It's also cold there too. So don't give me this weather bullshit. All right. If you're gonna use both, just go to Notre Dame. All right. You'll be just better. Like, Michigan sucks. Screw Michigan. All right. Do you really want to go to play for Jim Harbaugh? That dude seriously wears cleats in the homes of recruits. Like, what a goober. Alabama's Alabama, right? So I won't tell you to not go to a team that's won titles in the last, like, every other year, it feels, for the last 10 years. So, okay, like, that's like, I feel like Brian Kelly here. It's like, I'm fighting what everyone else has to fight. But anyway, Domani Jackson, you are the Twitter shout out this week. Schlante. Now, sidebar, in addition to Red Snapper being psyched, that is his high school, but also next year, right now, we do have a commit from Mater Dei already. CJ Williams, he's a 4-star wide receiver commit that is already verbally committed to Notre Dame, so good on you. And then also think back to who is another player, Fighting Irish Faithful, it's kind of a little bit of trivia. Who was another player in the past 6 years who played for Kelly, who also went to Mater Dei? That is walk-on Joe Schmidt. He walked on and he ended up being a captain and one of our solid rocks on our defense. So there you go. Okay, that's kind of where the podcast ends being positive because, look, we can kind of blow sunshine and rainbows up our ass and be patting ourselves on the back with our 25-point victory. But let's face it, Virginia's garbage. Their defense is terrible. And we should have scored more than 28 points. Let's just get right into this. Am I happy that we won by 25 points? Of course. But here's the problem. We only scored 28. National champions on average score 42 points per game. 42 points on average per game. Which means that their upper ceiling of points scored is significantly higher, especially against teams that, quite frankly, suck. And we scored 28 points. It is representative of not only a lack of a killer instinct by Brian Kelly, but also shows how far we still need to go to be in the upper echelon of college football today. Look, there's many things that we didn't do well, and I don't want to be a glass half empty kind of guy, but look, at the end of the second quarter, we had 2 timeouts left. There's 1:17 left. And Cone, I'm going to give him some praise here. He's very, very good at running the 2-minute drill. I haven't done a comparison between him and Book and running the 2-minute drill from last year, but Jack Cone runs the 2-minute drill really well. So why would you not put him in and try to get another touchdown before the end of the half? At least try it. No, we do 3 rushes to Chris Tyree, who's kind of being just thrown a bone, it seems, just to kind of keep him engaged so he doesn't transfer or something. And that's it. We go into halftime. All right. Now, there's other things that happened in this game where we had turnover on downs in the first quarter. Cone throws an interception. The Buckner Logan Diggs fumble that happened in Virginia's red zone, right? That's not Kelly's fault, right? Some of those things. But then in the fourth quarter, we also had a turnover on downs. So rather than look at this in like pointing specifically at what went wrong, I kind of want to look more holistically at it. Notre Dame had 11 total possessions, and I'm counting right at the end of the game, taking a knee with 30 seconds left, and also the end of the second quarter where we had the ball with 1:15 left. But Notre Dame had 11 total possessions. We only scored on 4 of them. 4 out of 11 success. And yes, we only scored touchdowns, but say we had kicked some field goals, I would have counted those as well because it's points on the board and it is a drive that results in points. This is a new analysis I did. And I wanted to know, okay, Notre Dame right now, college football playoffs rankings came out tonight, and Notre Dame is sitting at 8. Now, I'm not going to look at Michigan and Michigan State because I don't think either of those teams are going to make the playoffs because I think Ohio State is better than both of them. However, we can dream. But I wanted to look at the top 5 because that just makes the analysis easier. And look at Cincinnati, who's at 5, Ohio State at 4, Oregon, Alabama, Georgia. how many possessions those teams had in their games last week, and how many times they scored, including field goals. So let's start with Cincinnati. Cincinnati had 12 total possessions, one more than Notre Dame, and they scored 6 out of those 12. They ended up winning their game. 50%. Much better than Notre Dame's 4 out of 11. Let's skip Ohio State. Let's go up to number 3, Oregon. Oregon had 13 possessions, and they scored on 6 out of the 13. Now, it's less than 50%, but that percentage is still higher, and 2 more opportunities. And they beat up Washington State, a real crappy team. Alabama. Now, they played a really bad team, New Mexico State, but they scored on 9 out of 13. Georgia scored on 7 out of their 12. Ohio State versus Purdue, 9 out of 11 possessions. 9 out of 11 they scored. I think they only punted once in that game. And I think the other one maybe was like a turnover on downs or like the end of the game or something. Okay. End of the half. Who knows? Doesn't matter. Okay. The point I'm making is this. Notre Dame on offense over the last couple years is stalling the program. It is the reason why we are not reading the upper echelon. We are not beating our opponent because let's face it, Notre Dame, we need style points. We are sitting with 1 loss. We are not in control of our destiny. There are multiple teams above us with 1 loss. Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Oregon, and Alabama all have 1 loss. Can you really make the argument that we're better than them? Don't use this transitive property logic. Use facts, numbers, and data. All right, which I did 2 shows ago before the Navy game and proved that Notre Dame just did not have the numbers that added up to a team that is dominating when you compare them to teams that actually win the national title. All right, so we won't go there, but look at these other teams. When they're given the opportunity to score points, they have the ball. Do they actually score points? Notre Dame's not doing it. Not in this game, not against Virginia, a team that has a really, really shitty defense. Should we review the defense and their numbers last week for Virginia? It's not good. It's not good at all. They were 95th in passing defense. They were 115th in tackles for loss. They were 102nd in turnover margin. They were 120th in sacks per game, 122nd in rushing defense, 122nd in total defense. This team was crap. They had a terrible, terrible defense. And we only put up 28 points against a terrible, terrible defense. We should have buried this team. We should have scored over 42 points, and we didn't do it. That's on the coaching. That's on lack of killer instinct. Look, I'm not in practice. I'm not credentialed media. I'm just a dude drinking scotch in central Indiana here and getting pissed on a freaking Tuesday night at 11 o'clock. All right. This is the problem. We do not have an offense that is elite that can take us to that next level at this point. And this is evident by this game. All right. This is why people are upset with a team that's 9-1. Am I happy with 9-1 in the overall holistic view of the team? And we're ranked 8th in the playoffs. And wow, this is a great record. And most likely Notre Dame will be 11-1. And they should finish the year at 11-1. But the point is, I don't do this podcast saying, yay, 11-1, go Notre Dame. No, I demand excellence from this program. I demand a team that is competing for a national championship realistically, once every 5 years, okay, and kind of part of that conversation. And every time we get up there, we're very disappointed, and we're very disappointed at the results. And the results, if I'm looking at the numbers, looking at the data, they say the offense is the problem. And the ironic thing is Kelly was brought in as the offensive guru, all right? So, look, we don't have to rehash that whole situation. But, look, I saw on Twitter on Sunday that Pete Sampson had put out a poll, right? I don't want to, throw him under the bus, right? He's just doing his job, right? No problem, okay? But there was a probability because, let's face it, the SEC is going to kind of beat up, and it looks like, Alabama and Georgia are going to collide in the SEC championship. Michigan State is playing Ohio State this weekend, so who knows what's going to happen there. And so between Michigan State, and Ohio State, one of those three is going to end up at the top. So the Big Ten is actually really interesting this year. But they had Notre Dame with a 60% probability of actually making the playoffs. I thought that was pretty amazing. But if I step back and I look at the numbers and I look at, hey, we're only scoring on 4 out of 11 possessions. Hey, we don't even sniff what national champions do on average, except in one stat, which is sacks per game. We average 3.2 sacks per game. But all these other things, look, total touchdowns, right now we rank 46th in the country. The most important stat, we're 46th. National champions, 6th in the country. Scoring defense, we're 24. Okay, it's not bad. But national champions average 8.7. And so on and so forth. So you compare Notre Dame to the other team, that is what is going on. We don't compare. And if we honestly think that if we make the playoffs by some miracle because of chaos above us, because we're not in control of our own destiny, do you really think we're going to be successful? We're going to be ranked 4th and get our shit pushed in by Georgia? It won't be pretty, okay? You thought the Miami game from 2017 was bad? You got another thing coming when you go and play Georgia, all right? I don't even want to think about that. And no, I don't want to aim for a New Year's 6. Let me back up. I would love Notre Dame to make the playoffs, win a playoff game, and play for national championship, and of course be national champions. I would love that. So let's not confuse my realism here with negativity. I honestly want and hope for that. But I'm also grounded in reality. I'm an evidence-based person, okay? And I'm not going to be, drinking here and getting crazy here. No, we're not going to be, sunshine and rainbows, all right? 7-year-old Joe doesn't exist anymore, all right? I'm 37. I'm a line from the movie Clerks now, okay? I'm 37, all right? I've seen enough of Brian Kelly. I've seen enough of this team, and I've seen enough other college football and what teams are doing well, and Notre Dame is lacking, and that is a problem. And rather than just ignore it, I would rather face reality and deal with the problem and point it out and say, look, if enough of us maybe point it out and identify the problem, maybe it'll get fixed. I don't know. But I'm not going to sit here quietly behind this microphone drinking a scotch and just pretend it's not happening and say, hey, we're going to make the playoffs, and what though the odds be great or small, Notre Dame will win overall. I love that. I believe that. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen. It really doesn't. All right. Go back to the pre-Navy show where West Coast Irish and I, my brother at Red Snapper 9098, him and I are on the mics here, and we're going through the first rankings of the college football playoff, and I'm comparing Notre Dame to all 9 teams above them, and I say Notre Dame deserves exactly where they are. No, not unapologetic. And I kind of still believe that. So here we are. Look, Notre Dame right now is sitting at 9-1. We got Georgia Tech coming up. They're not good. We've got Stanford coming up. They're not good. They're having a down year despite their wins over USC and Oregon. But it definitely looks like Notre Dame will finish the season 11-1. Now, I went back to look at when was the last time Notre Dame finished the regular season 11-1. And that was in 1993. That was the year we lost to Boston College by a field goal. Very, very heartbreaking loss. But it also was the last season that we won a New Year's Six. We beat Texas A&M in the 1994 Cotton Bowl. I really, really hope And I get excited about this. I get excited that Notre Dame is in a better position to go to a New Year's Six instead of making the playoffs, because I just don't see it happening, right? We won't go into transitive property logic. Cincinnati beat us heads up, so they deserve to be in the playoffs before we ever do. That's my opinion. And, Ohio State, Michigan, there's more likelihood of two Big Ten teams making the playoffs than Notre Dame getting in. Okay. And I think if Alabama loses, they're out. Okay. And that's the situation. But say Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship, you're going to have Georgia and Alabama as the two teams, representing the SEC. And so then what? We're praying for Oregon to lose too. Like, there's just way too many things that have to happen to get Notre Dame out of the playoffs. So realistically, Notre Dame will go to a New Year's Six. Now, what's sad is I also thought, say Georgia beats Alabama, maybe Notre Dame would have to play Alabama in like the Sugar Bowl or something in a New Year's Six, which makes me get really cringy and feel very uncomfortable, like I'm jumping onto a bicycle with a seat missing, kind of uncomfortable. But anyway, Notre Dame should win out. Per teamrankings.com, they have an 82% chance to go 11-1, which is really, really good. I mean, we've never seen Notre Dame go 11-1 in decades, like 20 years, right? I mean, I don't even, God, is that 20 years? It's more than 20 years. Gosh. So is it? I can't do math tonight. I've been drinking. It's my own problem. And here I do talk about stats and numbers. But we have a 92% chance to beat Georgia Tech. Look, Georgia Tech's not good. They're 3-7, right? They're 0-2 against teams that they face that are in the Sagarin top 25. They're 2-6 versus Power 5 teams. Jeff Collins is their coach. Now, he's a nice guy, right? He came from Temple, and that was the first time Kelly played him was in 2017 when Notre Dame opened up against Super Cupcake Temple. And we also played Georgia Tech last year against Jeff Collins. But Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech, he's a 28% win percentage. It's not good. Now, clearly COVID has something to do with that. But look, compare him to Kelly. Kelly's at a 73% win percentage. So, yay, Kelly. Strength of schedule. I mean, let's not even talk about this. I mean, Notre Dame should pound them, right? Now, their defense is not nearly as bad as Virginia's. So what does that mean? Notre Dame's going to score 21 points? No, Notre Dame will score more than that. They're playing at home. But there are some stats that Georgia Tech is better than Notre Dame. Total offense, they have 401 yard points average per game. Notre Dame is under 400. They're ranked 65th. We're 69th. Rushing yards, Georgia Tech 51st in the country. Notre Dame is 84th on average for the season, not just counting the last 5 games, which are significantly better than the first 5. Tackles for loss, they are 58th in the country. Notre Dame, 6.4 average, 89th. Sacks allowed, they're 80th. We're 104th on the season. And they also run the ball more on average than Notre Dame. They run the ball 55 to our 53. But Notre Dame should kill them. We're favored by 16, 17 points, right? And our yards per point right now for the season is 12.29. Georgia Tech, 13.93. There's really no reason why Notre Dame should lose. If we lose, we need to be really pissed, and we'll have a really angry podcast next week. We might do a post-game rage podcast if that's... You know what? I'll go out on record here. If Notre Dame loses to Georgia Tech, we're going to have a post-game rage podcast. So that should not happen. But, hey, here we go. But anyway, that is it for the show tonight, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week. This is the last week before Thanksgiving. So if you are traveling this weekend or early next week, please be safe. But first, we got to take care of business against Georgia Tech. This is the last opportunity for snow. Now, I haven't not looked at the weather. I did see some stuff on Twitter about some snow coming down. There's something kind of special about snow during a Notre Dame football game. Now, I never actually was at a game while it was snowing, but I did go to 2 games where there was snow piled up in the corner of the end zone. And unfortunately, those were in the Weiss years, and that was against Syracuse and UConn. Not good games because we lost both. It was absolutely terrible. But anyway, thank you everyone for joining me. It's been a good show. And go Irish, beat Yellow Jackets.